Well, hello everybody. Welcome along to Snetterton for the Toyo Tyres Sevens Race Series here, supported by AF Sprinklers. We are delighted to see that our first race of the weekend, round 5 of the championship for the 1600cc series, is heading onto the grid. And, well, a fine sight they all make in this glorious weather that we've got here this weekend. Slightly overcast this afternoon. There's a slight breeze, but it's a warm ambient temperature, which means that these Control Toyo R888R tyres that all of the cars have to run, whether it be these or the 420Rs that we'll see later on. We'll be working hard in this particular weather here for what is 3 races this weekend for each of the classes. So there's plenty of racing to come up over the course of this weekend. So the cars are off on their formation lap. We'll guide you through the grid very shortly indeed. This grid has been set from the times that were posted over the course of the qualifying session that took place earlier on this morning. And then we will see as to how the grids form up for race 2 and race 3 over the course of a busy old weekend here at Snetterton. So it is Luke Rosewell that sits there on pole position, and alongside is the man who finished 5th in the championship last year, Gary Smith. Row 2 of the grid, it's last year's championship runner-up, which is David Yates, who has got Stuart Bell for company. On to row number 3, that's where we see Jeff Newman and Caroline Everett. And row number 4 sees John Chevroll line up alongside Michael O'Reilly, who's finished 7th in the series over the last couple of years. Row 5 of the grid, Simon Sharrock has Tim Child for company. And on row 8, it's Cameron Cooper and John Styring that line up together. On to the next row of the grid, which is row number 7, Chris Savage and Scott Parker, with Paul Wells and Andrea Bernani sitting there on what is row 8 of the grid. And then the 9th row of the grid, that's where we see Andy Ebden and Colin Lachlan alongside Greg Hyatt and Dave Androbus. And then the final row of the grid should see Roy Gray line up, who's there at the tail end of the field. So that's the way that they line up for this Toyo Tyres 7 race series race. And we'll wait and see as to who's going to come out on top. The man who starts on the outside of the front row of the grid, Gary Smith, arguably has been the man to beat so far this year, because there's only one race, the second of the 2 races at Donington Park, that he has not won. So they had 2 races at Donington Park. They had 2 races at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit when this championship was supporting the GT World Challenge Europe. And so 4 races down, 3 race wins, and the only race he didn't win, he finished 2nd at. So it's been a good haul of points for him, and a reasonable haul of points when you think of qualifying as well, because it's 3 points for pole, it's 2 for 2nd, it's 1 point for 3rd when it comes to qualifying. So already Gary Smith has added another couple of points to his championship tally, which stood at a nice round 200 coming into this weekend. So in terms of colours, car that sits there on pole position, Luke Roswell's car has got the green and red flashes to it. Gary Smith, who sits alongside, black with the odd little red flash here and there. David Yates on row 2 of the grid, it's sort of a lighter blue colour for him. Stuart Bell that sits alongside, it's red and black. And then when we look down for the 3rd row of the grid, Jeff Newman, it's sort of dark blue with day glow flashes. And alongside is the blue and green car in the hands of Caroline Everett, who sits ahead of John Chevroll, whose car is largely grey, and Michael O'Reilly's car that's sort of dark blue and black and orange, just to give you a few colours to try and pick out on the run up to this first race of the weekend for the Toyo Tyres 7 race series supported by AF Sprinklers. So, safety car has peeled off, the rolling start is ready to go. The weight of these cars around about 605 to 615 kilos, depending on the specification of the car. So they are light cars, they are not hugely aerodynamic, and Snetterton is a circuit where slipstreaming is absolutely key. So the key to this is going to be stay in the lead pack, stay in the draft, stay in the slipstream, and see where you are at the end of this 20-minute race that will be coming up very, very shortly indeed. So the safety car has peeled its way into the pit lane, and they are in neat order heading up towards the start-finish line. The lights are on the gantry, and we're about to get racing underway. Toyo Tyres 7 race series, round 5 of the championship gets underway, and it doesn't look as though it's a bad start from pole position from Luke Roswell, who is able to get his nose already ahead of Gary Smith on the charge up towards Ritchie's for the first time. Everybody else sort of jockeying for position further back. Looks like Michael O'Reilly got a reasonable start at the wheel of the number 13 car. Cameron Cooper just driving cautiously there on the inside line, heading up in towards Ritchie's, has been picked off by a few, but it is going to be Luke Roswell that leads the way in towards the braking area for the Wilson hairpin for the first time. Gary Smith slots through into second place. Everybody else sort of sliding around on their still coldish tyres. They've worked them hard on the formation lap to try and build temperature, but they're not up to full temperature yet, so there's a little bit of squirreling around. But already now we've had the change for the lead, and it's David Yates that has picked up the lead of the race on the run out of Wilson and up towards the left-hander at Palmer. It's the man who finished runner-up in this championship last year that leads the way. Is he going to hang on to it though by the time they get to Agostini? No, because the door is open. Luke Roswell is able to squeeze his way back through the pole sitter and retake up the lead. Now Luke Roswell and Gary Smith in qualifying were only separated by 10 1,000ths of a second, and it was a further nearly half a second back to David Yates. But David Yates has started this race as the man on the attack very much. He sits there in second place, the blue car with the white rollover hoop. Just raising the dust is Luke Roswell as he just dips a couple of wheels onto the curb coming out of Oggies, and then from there they flick right at Williams and start to build the speed again as they head down the Bentley Straight and in towards Brundle and Nelson. Difficult braking area, Brundle and Nelson, because you're trying to slow the car up and turn it in towards the left-hander at Brundle at the same time, so it's a difficult little section as they flick their way in towards Brundle now. Get the car straightened up, go down another gear, in towards the right-hander, a bit of a slide mid-corner there from David Yates, but he still hangs on to the lead of the race in the early stages of this one. There goes the number 8 car, that's Simon Sharrock, the man who finished 8th in the championship last year, with its day-glow orange wheel arches to it. Now through the never-ending Coram and in towards another difficult braking area really, Murray's, because you're still turning right through Coram as you then need to brake and shift the car down a gear to pitch it in towards the left-hander at Murray's. But everybody is safely through the vast majority of the first lap in this first of 3 races for them this weekend. Luke Roswell leads the way, but has got right with him David Yates. And is David Yates going to be in the lead by the time they get there? No, it's Gary Smith that gets the double draft, and Gary Smith goes through to pick up the lead of the race. He was 4th as it came over the start-finish line, and in typical Caterham fashion, 4th over the start-finish line. A few metres later, you're leading the race, but a few metres later, you're no longer leading. That's somebody off and on the grass, just heading out of Ritchie's corner. Difficult to pick up whom that may have been. There's a couple of possibilities that spring to mind, but couldn't see the number, so we'll leave it be for the moment. But into the lead of the race, Luke Roswell leading the way, but under this intense pressure in typical Caterham fashion, nobody is going away. And you can bet your bottom dollar that if Luke Roswell is leading by the time they head out of Williams and onto the Bentley Straight, he is highly unlikely to be leading by the time they get down towards Brundle and Nelson at the end of it. But he leads for the moment from David Yates in second place. Gary Smith is there in third position at the wheel of the number 22 car. Fourth place, that's going to be Stuart Bell, because it's a red and black car that's there in fourth place. And it looks like it's Caroline Everett that's still there in fifth position, but Caroline in the number 9 car is under attack for the car that sits behind, which is Michael O'Reilly, the man who has finished 7th in this championship on the last 2 years, so 2020 and 2021. He finished in 7th place, did Michael O'Reilly. Squeal of those Toyo tyres again, which are being worked hard. There goes Simon Sharrock under pressure from the 31 car of Andrea Bonani. Now, Andrea, where did he start? He started in 18th position, so he's worked his way up into at least 13th place now. He's picked a few off, and picking off the lead is David Yates, who bounces over the curbs. Luke Roswell no longer leading and is wheel to wheel with Gary Smith, who is also going to sneak through at the bomb hole. The door is open. Might Stuart Bell in the red car follow through? No, not quite. He's just got to sit behind as they flick their way through the right-hander at Coram. So the pole sitter for the moment down into third position and looking to see what he might be able to do. Now for Luke Roswell, non-scored in the first of the rounds at Donington Park, and then picked up podium places in both of the races at Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit. He was just outside of the top 6 in the second of the 2 races at Donington, so he's sort of down on points in reality compared to others. And the difficult thing in this championship is totals from all qualifying rounds count. So for Luke Roswell, he's got to keep pushing because he's already had 1 non-score. And when every single round counts, you can't really afford to have another poor race, let alone another poor weekend. So he's pushing hard here, the pole sitter, down in third place. So on the short straight, that brings him up towards the left-hander at Palmer. Quite a fast corner, Palmer. Grab the apex. Cars you can see dancing around on the very edge of adhesion. There's the number 79 car, Jeff Newman, who's gone slightly backwards really from where he started. Jeff started in 5th position, but was down to 7th last time they came over the start-finish line. I think might be down to 8th now as well, so he's got a bit of work to do. But as ever, he is in that lead train of cars, and that's exactly what you need to do. make sure you're in that lead draft of cars, because there's still a long way to go in this race. 14.5 minutes. And David Yates is leading the charge, leading the way, but as ever, under pressure. First of which is the car of Gary Smith, the next of which is going to be the car of the pole sitter, Luke Rosewell. Gary Smith is also, remember, the championship leader with 3 wins already under his belt. He sits there in second place. Luke Rosewell will be sitting right on his bumper all the way down the Bentley straight, and then we'll pick his moment to try and jink out, will he, or is he going to just sit with him? No, he's just sitting behind this time through, so top 3 still together. The red car still shows that it's Stuart Bell that's there, and then we're side by side Caroline Everett coming under pressure from the next of the cars that sits behind her, which is the number 13 car, I think, of Michael O'Reilly. There's Andrea Bernani, the number 31 car. Like the ex-Marco Egham car from a couple of seasons ago. Still pushing hard, and where is he up to now? Up to 13th position, so yeah, 2 places gained last time through from the car that started in 16th. It's now up into 13th position. As over the start-finish line, they flash their way again. Now, who's going to be leading this time by the time they get towards Ritchie's corner? It was Gary Smith as they came over the start-finish line by 54 thousandths of a second, as you can see on the screen there. By the time they get towards the braking area for Wilson, it may well be different again. In fact, the top 3 were separated by a quarter of a second, and as they come in towards the braking area, it is Luke Rosewell that is looking to try and put Gary Smith under pressure, but by trying to put him under pressure, the door is open, and David Yates looks to try and squeeze his way through. I don't think that's quite going to work, so Yates will just blend out of the throttle a little bit, rather than make the little bit of contact that was inevitable had he not have done so. Didn't lose any ground at all to Luke Rosewell. So what is it, top 4, top 5 cars, top 6, 7 that have made the breakaway really now. So it's all the way from Gary Smith that leads the race down to Jeff Newman that's there in 7th position, that are pretty much in one great big train. Then we finally get a little bit of a gap after that, which is where we see John Chevrolet's car.
They certainly do. Penalties coming from Roswell, so it's not confusing having a Roswell and a Rosewell in the same race.
So through the right-hander at Oggies, and then from there, build the speed again as they head up towards Williams. Important corner this, you've got to get cleanly off the corner because you carry all of that momentum down the straight. So might have to compromise the entrance to absolutely nail the exit and then get the toe all the way down the Bentley straight. Matters not so much on this lap, but come the final lap, that will be hugely important. And also on the final lap, probably the exit out of Murray's, the very last corner in typical Caterham fashion, might be the decider for this one. Snatch break from the race leader there as well. So Gary Smith snatched the break, hung on to it, didn't lose any time. So it's Gary Smith that leads. Luke Rosewell there in 2nd place. David Yates is still there in 3rd place. And there goes the number 71 car of John Chevrolet. He's right up onto the coattails of the car that lies ahead of him, which at the beginning of this lap was Michael O'Reilly, but I think he's been picked off as John Chevrolet on this lap, and it may well have been a change of position as Tim Child went through, because it's a Dayglow green car that now looks to be ahead. So nearly halfway through this race now, 4 laps completed. Over the start-finish line goes Gary Smith. Now he has got the biggest advantage that anybody has had on any lap going over the start-finish line. There's Michael O'Reilly, the number 13 car, in 6th position. Now he might have half an opportunity there to sneak up the inside of Caroline Everett, who is not quite as clean and tidy exiting Ritchie's corner. No, can't quite go through, not for want of trying. And Caroline Everett, I think, picked off Stuart Bell, so they're starting to break up into 2 distinct groups now. Caroline Everett fighting away there in what will be 4th position. So the top 3, top 4 breaking away, and then it's another quartet thereafter. So it's top 3 that have broken away. So 1, 2 and 3 altogether, and then 4, 5, 6 and 7 altogether, being headed by the blue car with the green flashes, which is Caroline Everett. Then it's Stuart Bell. Stuart Bell has got Michael O'Reilly right with him, and Michael O'Reilly is under pressure from the next of the cars that sits directly behind as well, which is going to be
as much as they possibly can, because all of that battling for
Jeff Newman's car, I think.
Drop them away from the top 3.
So we're at the halfway point of this race now, up towards Oggies. They will thread their way. Jeff Newman, indeed, at the back of that little pack, will look to see whether he can pick up a place or 2. He's just outside of the top 6 as things currently stand. And another good little fight. This is for what's 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th and 21st position, all going through there. At the front of that little queue is going to be Colin Loughlin, and it will go all the way back to something like Dave Antrobus, I think. So they might be fighting for 15th place, but they're also at the back of that train fighting almost for last position as well, because it's just, again, another great big train of Caterhams, and that is so typical of Toyo Tyres 7 Series racing. Now this time through, looks as though Luke Rosewell has taken the lead and might have got a bit of a gap between himself and Gary Smith, who is still palming away the aspirations of David Yates. The two of those in second and third place just turn their way out of Murray's and again head over the start-finish line. 9 minutes remain, 5 laps completed. Fastest lap of the race has gone last time through to the car of David Yates, and David Yates this time through he goes a little bit quicker again. 2 minutes 9.773 from David Yates, sees him set the fastest lap of the race. Now the way it works for the grid is that the grid for race 2 is the finishing order for race 1 with the top 10 reversed. So who's in 10th at the moment? Car number 77, John Styring, is in 10th at the moment. So his car, potentially if he stays there for the remaining 8.5 minutes, will be heading towards pole position for race number 2 of the weekend. Nice slide mid-corner through Palmer. Luke Rosewell working the car hard, but he's there in 3rd position. Championship leader sitting there in 2nd position. Leading the race is David Yates at this stage. Now David Yates didn't appear at Donington Park on the national circuit when we started it, so he appeared at Brands Hatch for the race that supported the World GT Challenge Europe for the first time. He's leading this race. Well, the best he finished in both of the 2 races at Brands Hatch was in 6th position, so he's doing well to be fighting for a podium in just his 2nd weekend of racing this season in the Toyo Tyres 7s race series. The 1600cc cars, we'll see the 420Rs out later on today. So speeds build again as they make their way down the Bentley straight, and David Yates is under pressure. Gary Smith is going to pick up the lead of the race, or might it be Luke Rosewell? It's Luke Rosewell that just picks up the lead of the race, so he goes from 3rd to 1st in the length of the Bentley straight, and it's in stark contrast. David Yates goes from 1st to 3rd. Now, these 3 were getting away a little bit, but I think Caroline Everett now might be just edging up towards them, the car that sits there in 4th position. Look at the last lap times, doesn't suggest so. I think this lap Caroline Everett might have closed the gap. She was almost 2 seconds adrift of the trio ahead, but I think that gap may well have come down a little bit. She was certainly very quick through the 1st sector and quicker than some of those ahead through the 2nd sector. So I think the number 9 car is on its way here, Caroline Everett. Let's just have a wait and see. Black and white warning flag's been held out, as they have been for the vast majority of the race, for drivers transgressing the circuit limits. And Caroline Everett, let's have a look as she goes through. Gap is, well, it's hovered around the same actually. It hasn't come down by a great deal at all. A few thousandths of a second, but not a great deal more than that. But these 3 now are starting to squabble ever more with 6.5 minutes to go. Any working together is slowly starting to disappear out of the window, because all of them will want the win, and of course the more they squabble, the more the pack behind will begin to close up again, and as soon as they get in their toe again fully, they'll be right back in on them in the next couple of laps. So through Palmer, this is lap number 7, Gary Smith leading, Luke Rosewell 2nd, blue car with its black and white flashes to it. David Yates, runner-up in the championship last year, having finished 10th the year before, sits there in 3rd position. 6 minutes to go. They're going to squeeze out at least another 3 laps out of this one. Might even get 4, but I think 3 probably. So it'll be a 9, possibly a 10 lap race in total we'll get in over the course of the 20 minutes allocated. And there's been no let up in the pressure again. Gary Smith, almost, you could see there, a bit of mid-corner oversteer, which he just had to counter with a tiny bit of opposite lock. But the great thing is, with the wheels being exposed on the Caterhams, you can see, almost see the driver input. You can see the direction of the wheel change just as they adjust mid-corner to what the car is doing, and feeling it all of the time. And you do really feel as though you're sitting over the rear axle on these cars as well. Now, Luke Rosewell, who was leading, is going to do what happened on the previous lap. He went from 3rd to 1st. Well, he's done the opposite this time around. He's gone from 1st back to 3rd again. And who's back leading? David Yates again. So Gary Smith is playing the canny game here. He's just sitting in 2nd at the moment. Poor old Caroline Everett's been picked off on this lap though, because her car, number 9 now, the blue and green car, is down to 6th position. So through has gone Stuart Bell by the look of things, and the other car that has gone through and has taken a position is going to be the number 13 car, which is Michael O'Reilly's car. So 2 places lost for Caroline Everett, I'm afraid, on that lap, and it might not end there, because the next car is queuing up behind her, which is number 79, Jeff Newman's car, with its Dayglow orange rollover hoop. So 4.5 minutes to go. Fastest lap of the race still goes to the car that's in second place at the moment. Who's in 10th, because that's important for the reversal of the grid. It is still in 10th place, car number 77, which is John Styring, who started 12th. Remember, it's the top 10 from this race, subject to any penalties. If cars get penalties, then they might drop outside of the top 10. But yeah, subject to penalties, top 10 get flipped for race number 2. Now, 4 minutes to go. Through Palmer for the 8th time. Luke Rosewell, the pole sitter, still pushing hard. Gary Smith, the championship leader, out front and trying to see whether he can build a little bit of daylight between himself and the chasing pack. 3 for the lead, a quartet thereafter. Which at the front of it has got the red car of Stuart Bell. At the tail end of it, it's that car there. The Dayglow yellow rollover hoop, suggesting that it's Jeff Newman. And as ever the case, they just seem to sort of get themselves into groups. Hunting in groups is a really good way of sort of describing the way caterings work. They all are in one group to start with, and then they sort of slowly over the course of the race separate into separate groups. But it's very occasionally you'll see anybody in a Toyo Tyres 7 Series race circulating on their own. There's always somebody to play with. And here they come down the Bentley straight once more. Trying to break the toe on the cars behind, but weaving from one side to the other is not happening just as yet. Just moving from one side to the other, but Gary Smith working hard to see whether he can scoop up the first win in the Toyota 7 Race Series, supported by A&F Sprinklers, over the course of this weekend. Now, we are going to get down to 2 laps to go this time through. So they are on lap number 8 currently. And as they come round through Corham and in towards the braking area for Murray's, it's Gary Smith that is going to lead on the conclusion of this lap. But again, what's going to happen is that David Yates and Luke Rosewell are both going to close up in the slipstream. They'll get the tow as they come down the big long centre straight that leads them up towards Ritchie's corner. It's slightly uphill from the very exit of Murray's all the way up towards Ritchie's, not by a great deal, bearing in mind we are in Norfolk, a fairly flat county, but it is uphill nonetheless, which means the tow works beautifully well, and it is a slight headwind as well, so the tow really works well today. It's when you dive out of it you feel that headwind, and through and into the lead has gone David Yates. Gary Smith has gone down into second, Luke Rosewell is there in third, and now what we start to do is, for these next few laps, play the game of chess. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be at the start of the final lap? Do you want to be in third place and get the double tow down the Bentley straight to put you in the lead going into Brundle and Nelson, but then you have to defend coming out of Murray's? Or do you want to be in the lead at Brundle and Nelson at all? Do you just want to blend out of the throttle down the Bentley straight and sit yourself in second and third and try and pick off a car on the run to the line? It really is almost like a game of poker. You don't want to show your hand, you just try and work out where you think you have the best advantage, and then if your move gets covered off, there's nothing then you can do about it, and that is typical Toyo Tyres 7's racing. So out of Hoggies, there'll be another lap after this one. Now David Yates has led a couple of times onto the Bentley straight, but has always been down in third by the end of it, as Gary Smith has been the man who's been quite canny. He's been quite content there to sit there in second place all of the time, the championship leader. You can see a little bit of weaving, a bit more weaving around being done on this lap to try and break the tow on the cars behind. And what's going to happen is that Gary Smith is going to drop from second to third. So Luke Rosewell comes up into second place. Still leading the way is David Yates. We've got in the background Stuart Bell in fourth place, but he's now coming back under pressure, I think, from a rejuvenated Caroline Everett, was it? Yes, it is. Yeah, it's the blue car with its green rollover hoop of Caroline Everett that's gone back through. So she is now back up into fifth place, having dropped to sixth a few laps ago, and has finally clawed her way back. So 30 seconds to go as they head out of Murray's, and now onto the final lap. Now all bets are off. Here we go. This is the lap. This is what we're going to find out. But where are they going to do it? Are they going to get themselves in position at the start of the Bentley straight, the end of the Bentley straight, or will it be the charge to the line that will decide this one? Now somebody there is receiving a 5-second penalty for track limits. No indication as to whom that might be just as yet. Let's hope it's nobody towards the sharp end of the grid. We gather it might be car number 31, which is going to be Andrea Bonani. So he will drop down through the order, which has undone some of that hard work that he'd done, I'm afraid. Nearly said, oh, that's close. David Yates wheel to wheel with Gary Smith. Gary bounces over the curbs on the exit of the corner. He'll have the inside line when they get up towards Palmer, but David Yates will brave it out on the outside if he can make it stick. They both give each other enough room and go side by side through Palmer, and David Yates hangs on to the position. So just gets his car across the nose of Gary Smith. So David Yates hanging on to second place. Luke Rosewell still leading the way though. We've still got Stuart Bell. Then we've got Michael O'Reilly, who comes charging up the inside of Caroline Everett, who all of a sudden now drops back from 5th back to 6th, whilst Jeff Newman is queuing up to try and haul himself inside the top 6 at the wheel of car number 79. But for the lead of the race, the leading trio turning their way out of Oggies for the final time. Now Luke Rosewell has got a bit of daylight between himself and the pack behind, but they are still in the tow, all importantly, but it's going to take them a few seconds to get right up onto the rear bumper of his car. So has Luke Rosewell done enough? You can see him weaving around on the straight to do anything to try and break the tow on the cars behind. Is he still going to have the lead when they head down in towards Brundle and Nelson? Yes, he is, but only just. David Yates is right on his tailpipes. Gary Smith is there as well. 3 as 1 turn their way out of Brundle, out of Nelson. The short straight up towards the point where they'll turn in towards the bomb hole, and then it's Coram, and as ever is the case, it is going to be the sprint to the line that is going to decide who is going to pick up the victory and the spoils in round 5 of the 2022 Toyo Tyres Racing Series, supported by A&F Sprinklers, up towards the braking area for the left-hander at Murray's. A spin on the final lap for Ben Roswell, but it is going to be Luke Rosewell that might just grab this, or might David Yates do it on the run to the line. He jinks out from behind. It's almost going to be 3 wide as they head to the line, and it is almost a dead heat as they come over the start-finish line. The top 3 cars initially covered by 68 thousandths of a second, and it is suggesting at this stage that David Yates won that race by 49 thousandths of a second from Luke Roswell, who was 19 thousandths of a second ahead of Gary Smith. But what frequently happens when we get a race finish so close, and it happens quite frequently in Caterham Racing and the Toyo Tyres 7th Race Series, is that the timekeepers will look at the data. They'll double check the data, double check the information that's coming off the transponders on the car, and if needs be, they can refer to a photograph as well of a photo finish to try and pick out as to who was where. But for the moment, it's saying that David Yates will have picked up his first win of the season, and by, well, the thinnest of margins as well. After we got the top 3 over the line, Stuart Bell was there in 4th place, Michael O'Reilly in 5th, with Caroline Everett in 6th position, Jeff Newman 7th in that next train of cars that we had. 8th place looks as though it's going to be Tim Child. 9th place was the car of Chevrolet that finished in 9th place, John Chevrolet. And completing the top 10 is John Styring, and that's important for John. He was 10th for the vast majority of the race, and remember, the top 10 get reversed for race number 2 of the weekend. So John Styring potentially heading towards pole position for race number 2 of the weekend. And if you're wondering how it works for the 3rd grid of the weekend, well, again, it's finishing result from race 2, top 10 reversed again. So that's the way it works for the remainder of the weekend. So let's just confirm the results for you then. The win in the race goes the way of David Yates, with Luke Rosewell in 2nd place, and it was Gary Smith who was there in 3rd position. Stuart Bell was 4th, ahead of Michael O'Reilly, who was there in 5th place, and Caroline Everett was 6th. Jeff Newman was in 7th place, then it was Tim Child in 8th, ahead of 9th place being the car of Chevrolet, finishing there in 9th position, and the top 10 was completed by the man who will start race number 2 of the weekend from pole position, which is John Styring. In 11th place, got the time penalty in the end, didn't he, and dropped down through the order. It was Andrea Bonani ahead of Carner Brate, who was there in the next position, which was Simon Charrett. Rather went backwards, really. Started in, 9th place, finished in 12th place. 13th place is 99, which is Cameron Cooper, and you can see the rest of the runners from there after, with the final car to take the checkered flag being the number 57 car of Dave Antrobus. And well, that's it for the Toyo Tyres Racing Series for the moment from here at Snetterton. We can see the drivers there busy chatting away in Park Ferme, the final points of the race. Big smiles all round, which is always nice to see when you see a series. And that's part of the attraction, I think, for many of these drivers in the Toyo Tyres 7s Series. It's serious stuff on track, but it's also very sociable off track, and they're all encouraged to sort of have a laugh while they're out there, enjoy their racing, and be respectful as well. And you can see that, yeah, they're all discussing the finer points of the race. And that's it for the 1600s. We will, however, see the 420Rs out later on this afternoon. So from everybody here at Snetterton, thanks for joining us, but make sure you're back for the 420Rs. They'll be back out on track around 5 o'clock this evening. Until then, goodbye.